Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Texas Examiner. I'm Robert Sines, and John Tipton is my co-host here today, and we have a phenomenal show for you today. This is about international arms dealing, and so this is something that everyone in the United States should be paying close attention to. And thanks to my co-host and his contacts, we were able to bring forth today someone that you will find extremely interesting. Someone who's been involved in many countries along the globe.
From what I understand, yes.
So, John, why don't you introduce our guest today and tell our viewers a little bit about what we're going to talk about?
Well, folks, this morning, first I want to caveat and add on to what Robert was saying. This is unprecedented. This type of an interview, this type of a discussion where you're getting some first-person information about what the world really is like today and how people like our guest, while a legal arms dealer, are out there actually combating against those folks who take advantage of broken systems. And it's just going to be an amazing show, folks. And we're so glad that you can join us. I want to go ahead and preface by saying thank you to our guest, because there is a level of trust that must be in place before something like this can take off. And I want to let you all know that we will be using a pseudonym. We will not be making reference to our guest's real name or their location, and we will not be divulging information specific enough to be able to do a link analysis and determine who this individual is. So please take that into consideration as you're watching the show and asking yourself, why won't they just come out and tell us?
Right.
And the answer is because this is a dangerous business, whether you are legal or doing it illegal, and you don't have a lot of friends in this industry. And I'm proud to be able to say that this individual, I consider him a very good friend, a close friend. And I guess, Consta, if that's all right with you, do you mind if I share kind of how we know each other without going into too much detail?
Go ahead, Joe.
So, folks, most of you do not know, and Robert, I think I've shared with you, after I got out of the Army back in 2010, I was sitting around with nothing to do and had somebody say, hey, why don't you go over and fight pirates in Africa and Somalia and the Red Sea? And I looked at the guy like he was crazy, like he had something, a phallic symbol out of his forehead.
Right.
I'm an Army guy. I don't get on the water. Right. But then I went, that sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, fun. So for the next several years, that's what I did for a living. And in my travels, there was a necessity for obtaining some hammers and nails, which you will understand what that terminology is as we move forward. But we needed those resources in locations that you wouldn't be able to just go down to the local gun shop and purchase. So we had to have some assistance, and because of the intense scrutiny on the subject of piracy at the time, the only way that you really wanted to operate was 100% legally.
So you couldn't always get arms from the military? Is that what you're saying?
Well, at that point in time, we're not on our black passports. We're on, or brown. We're on our normal blue ones, right?
Okay.
So
you have to
there's
find guns where you can get them.
You had to find them where you could get them, and you had to get them legally, because every country that we would go into would require this paperwork in order for us to be able to transit their territorial waters. Even you may not even pull into port.
Right.
They can come and inspect you at any time. So you wanted to make sure. And long story short, folks, we'll go through this some more as our guest is speaking, I'm sure. But that's how I was introduced to him, and we've stayed in touch over the years since then. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have met this gentleman who has decades of experience, not only in the legal international arms trade, but he's got a master's of science in computer science. He has some other high-level degrees. He's done a variety of jobs all over the world, ranging from, I believe, as a dadgummit, now I'm having a brain fart. But he's been a counselor Is that correct, Costas? You were a counselor for a while?
I was a social worker for a while.
The social worker,
Interesting.
university education, and I'll let Consta go into the details of his background. But again, I just wanted to thank you, sir, very much for your trust and for the ability to sit down to get to visit with you. And what an exciting story. I am so excited to hear what you have to say.
Yes, me too.
So,
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
and folks, if we didn't say it earlier, this is
Costa,
Consta.
Costa.
Yes.
Costas, not Costa. Costa.
I'm thinking of sunglasses.
Costa.
Costa.
Sounds almost Spanish.
Yeah, almost.
It's a name. It's a pseudonym.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about you, Costa. How? Well, what can you tell us? Can you tell us a little bit about your background, or where you grew up, or even where you are today?
I'll tell you where I am today. I mean, that's it's pretty obvious because if people read the book that you're going to talk about, or that we'll talk about a little bit later on, I mean, I'm married.
Yes.
That's it. I grew up in a small village, basically an RAF station. We moved around a lot. Basically an Air Force brat, not an Army brat. Went to, I think, 11 or 12 schools by the time I was 11. Then got kicked off to boarding school because we were in Ireland at the time, in Northern Ireland. And yeah, my parents didn't really like the road I was going down, so to speak. Being Irish, well, half Irish, more Irish than British. My feelings for the Northern Ireland issue was that the island should have been won and not controlled in the north by the Brits. But that's a different political story. I have to say that I ended up working in some interesting places. I got seconded to go and help the Dutch Antilles government's counter-piracy, counter-proliferation of small arms like weapons, counter-narcotics, counter-human trafficking in the Caribbean. And from there to the Philippines, counter-terrorism, coin operations. You know the story, how it goes. And from there, I moved back to Europe. Got divorced with that German ice lady from the north, so to speak. And yeah, exactly. And from there, after the divorce, I decided. You never heard that one before? Ice maiden from the north.
It's an inside joke. There's some there. It's just an inside joke. There, we have an ice lady from the north in this area as well.
Okay, well, that's probably a bit outside of my geographical knowledge, but whatever.
Right.
But from there, was basically, what do I do for a living? And after the social work, I decided, well, that's not really for me. And I thought, well, what can you do? And I grew up with guns on the streets, in back garages. I grew up with ammunition as a child, finding old 303 bullets and taking the heads off, and blowing the caps out, and shit like that. And I thought, well, what can I do? I did counter-proliferation of small arms and light weapons. I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. At least I know what I'm doing there. Why don't I become an arms dealer and make sure that I do it legally? And I thought,
I
thought if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it legally because I don't want to end up dead in a ditch with a bullet in the back of my head somewhere in the middle of Africa. So that's what I did. I opened up a company, which I was licensed. I'm licensed by small arms like weapons, category C, dual use items, etc., etc. And I started plying my wares. Yeah, people come to me and they say, well, we'd like a couple of guns. I think, guys, I don't sell a couple. I start at 50 minimum. Yeah. Okay, well, how soon can we get them? I said, look, I don't keep a garage full of Kalashnikovs. So, it's going to take a while. And apart from that, I need papers. For me to get them to you, I need papers. That's basically half what my expertise is, shall we say. I hate the word expert because.
So
Go on.
So Costa, so someone typically someone from another country approaches you and says, "I need X amount of small arms." When you say papers, what do you mean by
I'm talking
that?
about end-user certificates, import certificates, permission from the exporting country to export them, shipping documents. Then have to make sure they're not on an embargo list, etc., etc.
Gotcha.
It's a pretty detailed process, and I've been on that end. If you recall, when I imported all that ammunition from South Africa,
It keeps him from selling the cartels, or
that's what I say. I mean, I've got the paperwork that says that's what we're supposed to do with it, but I think Costa can tell us that may not always be the case.
It isn't always the case. I mean, let's draw a very, very bland picture. Nicolas Cage in Lord of War, where he says, there are three types of EUCs, the white one, the black one, and the grey one, the convoluted one. Well, to me, there's no grey, there's only black. Now, my expertise and my knowledge allows me to move weapons, or as John so nicely put it, hammers and nails, from country A to country Z, bypassing all the other countries. It's legal the way I do it, but it's not legal if somebody takes those weapons and send them straight from A to Z. You can't do that. This might be an embargo country, it might be on the blacklist. It might even be a country that's coming up to be on the embargo list, which are the best kind, because they know an embargo doesn't start overnight. It doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
What I do is, if somebody approaches me and they say, okay, we need this, that, and the other, what I like to do is go into the country and do a complete geopolitical analysis of what exactly is going on, who the neighbors are, what the domestic or the external threats to the country are, and go from there. What do they have? What do they need? What can they change? What can they sell? How much money do they have? Etc., etc. And that's basically how I do it. Or, as you said, Bob, people come to me and say, okay, we need X amount of AKs or M14s or M16s or whatever. Well, then I source the weapons. I have my suppliers. And then the paper trail starts. End user certificate, flights, export, import, and obviously money transfers. That's the hardest thing to get.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many banks that I used to have a very good one, but when they got what shall we say? When they got fined over a large audit for being involved in dirty transactions, I'll put it that way, they suddenly decided that they didn't want to work with little old me. They would prefer to keep their larger clients, such as BA Systems, who sells more in an hour than I could in 5 years. So basically, they closed my account down, and I had to look around for another bank. You can't
That must be an interesting, Costa. That must be an interesting dialogue when you go to another bank and say, "This is what I do. I'm an international arms dealer. I like to open an account." Is that kind of how it goes?
I don't advertise that fact. I say I'm in a security-related industry. And they usually ask for the website, so I give them the website. There's nothing on my website that says I sell guns. The only thing on the website that says that all ammunition supplied by us is NATO approved and tested. That's the only thing. Mostly what happens is, if I have to, I will fly to where the money is, and I will take the money, and I will move it myself. That is sometimes a little bit difficult. Or I get, I use a Forex company or something like that. It's perfectly legal. It's just that banks, as such, they don't like being associated with arms dealers. even though I'm legal. And their biggest customers, as I said, PA Systems, Grumthorpe, all the big American companies, they have their own banks. They have no problem because they're raking in billions in profits. And I'm talking maybe 1 million, 1.5, something like that for a deal. So
It's amazing that here in the United States, for a time, and I think there's still a challenge. Credit card processors. There's only one credit card processor that'll allow you to a company or a gun shop to take credit cards. The rest of them shut it down. That was about it was about 8 years ago when they started that.
And John, in these international arms transactions, does it ever happen where the guns don't get to point Z and they end up in the wrong hands?
Well, I have my suspicions. I have no firsthand knowledge. I suspect that Costa does, and which brings up a very interesting question. Back in I think in 2022, there was an aircraft that was leaving Poland, I believe, and somehow ended up crashing before it reached its final destination. Do you have any insight into that incident?
That was the Antonov 12 that crashed in Greece. It was actually leaving Serbia. It was leaving Serbia and it crashed. They do say that obviously I'm not an expert on airplanes. I know that they fly or they don't. Now this thing was a 52-year-old Antonov 12 that apparently it got over the sea between Kavala, which is in northern Greece, and an island called Lemnos. The flight captain requested an emergency landing because there was a fire on one of the engines. They said, okay, turn around, you can either land at Thessaloniki Airport, or you can go to Kavala. This guy decided he'd go to Kavala. He didn't make it, he crashed. It's very strange, actually, because a plane like this carrying military equipment, and everybody knew what was on there. I mean, when you file a flight plan, you have to declare what your cargo is. And as he was flying through Greek airspace, they obviously knew what it was. Excuse me. Now, normally in cases like this, when there's a fire on board a plane, especially a plane carrying military goods or 1.4 dangerous goods, like bullets, ammunition, etc., he would have been diverted to the nearest military airport that had a runway long enough for the Antonov, which would have been Lemnos. There's a military airport there that has a 3,000-meter runway. Now, why he wasn't diverted there is, in fact, he was closer to that airport than he was to turn around and go back to Kavala. He passed Kavala and he was nearly at Lemnos. So the only reason that I can think that they didn't go to the military airport is because if he'd landed there or emergency landing there, the goods would have been inspected. The whole story would have come out exactly what was on board, where was it going, etc., etc. Now the plane was theoretically, the flight plan anyway at least said that it was going to Bangladesh via Jordan and Saudi Arabia. So it was going to land at Amman and refuel. The thing we know about Jordan is that they are chock full of, basically every kind of American weapon or NATO weapon that you can think of. So the general consensus among a lot of people in the group that I work with or work together with in the arms community is that this plane was carrying, other than what was on the cargo manifest. It wasn't all that he said on there, it was more. It was approximately 11.5 tons of weapons and ammunition. The Serbian government, or the Serbian Ministry of Defense, declared that it was illuminating mines, which, John, you know as well as I do, that's woody peat. White phosphorus. That's the only illuminating flares that are used in mortars. They said it was going to Bangladesh. Okay, well, whatever. The general theory and consensus is that this plane was going to Oman. It was either offloading and it would go from there to Poland, which would transport it then into Ukraine. Whatever happened, I mean, it didn't get where it was supposed to be going, and unfortunately, they lost 8 lives on that plane.
And if I recall reading an article, there was a challenge with getting rescue crews to the aircraft fast enough because of the noxious fumes, which would seem to indicate, Willie Pete or something very much like that. And then after the fact, there weren't a whole lot of remains for any kind of forensic study.
There wasn't a lot left. There was explosions going on in that area of the aircraft for about 4 hours after the initial fire and the initial crash. They couldn't get that.
Sounds quite suspect.
The plane. They couldn't get the fire brigades in because 2 firemen were actually taken to the airport, taken to the hospital because they were suffering from breathing issues and burning lips, which again, Willie Pete. And the government made a large hullabaloo and a cry about why weren't we informed, etc., that this craft was flying. And the Serbian government actually turned around and said, "Stop your whining, we informed you," and then the whole thing was swept under the carpet. Yeah. Yeah, well, that actually ties well with what happened to me, and that was approximately a month to 6 weeks before this plane crash. I was approached by a person who was representing 6 Serbian businessmen. I don't know their names. I don't know what company they were with. I know nothing about them at all. I was approached by this guy to organize a logistics route for 11.5 tons of military equipment, from air machine guns, ammunition, mortars, Willie Pete, by the way, and various other landmines, etc. And this was being donated by these Serbian businessmen to Ukraine. And the reason they were looking for a logistics supporter was to basically allow them to move this stuff without anybody realizing it was coming from Serbia, because the Serbians are more or less on the side of the Russians in this situation. So I decided, through my company we could do that. The items would be on paper transferred to my company. I would arrange the transport from Serbia to Poland, drop it off, give it to the Poles, and they would transfer along with the rest of the other stuff that they'd move into Ukraine. Unfortunately, it didn't come off. I could have made a decent amount of small change on that, but it wasn't to be. And then the next thing we all knew was the plane went down in Kavala, which is outside of Kavala. It's just so strange,
Does this happen often, Costa, where when we're in the middle of a war and the enemy finds out about a shipment and it mysteriously gets blown up or lost
it's
or
normal.
deviated?
Normal. It wouldn't get deviated, it wouldn't get lost, it would get blown up. Someone would do something to the airplane or the train or whatever, and it would mysteriously disappear under suspicious circumstances. Yeah.
I think it's interesting that most people in the United States, especially now, Costa, as you're aware, we're coming into an election year, a very big one for this country. And part of the infighting on the Republican side and even on the Democratic side is whether or not the United States should continue to underwrite Ukraine in their efforts. We have sent, and I can't even keep track, I know it's well over $2 billion, quite a large, and that's just in cash, or they lump equipment in that as well. I suspect it's much more than that. But most of our listeners and our viewers, Costa, refuse to believe that nation states or governments can be involved in this type of an activity.
Yeah.
And if Robert or I were to make that comment to people within the circles that we visit with, they most likely would think that we're crazy, conspiracy theorists, and that nothing like this could ever happen. And I'm going out on a limb, and by extension, I may be putting Robert out on the limb.
Thanks, John.
by saying that absolutely 100% it happens. I think Benghazi is another great example of where things went completely wrong for multiple reasons. But we never should have been there to begin with respect to the arms that were being moved around by then Secretary of State.
Yeah, well, Benghazi was a shithole, and it was a fuck up to begin with. The buyback that happened, I know this from personal experience, the buybacks that happened, they were the Strelas and the Eagles, or the SA-7s, as you guys call them, yeah, sure, they were bought back, but not all of them were declared. They were moved into Syria. I used to have a friend who was with the Air Force, who worked at the here, and he was asking me about this, and we can't find out where they've gone and what's going on, etc. I said, where have you been looking? He said, well, we've been looking with the satellites at the deserts, and we can't find any trails of trucks anywhere. I said, you're a fucking idiot. You think these guys are going to be using trucks? And he said, no, man, they're putting them on camel trains. And that is exactly what happened. There's still a lot of shit buried out in the desert somewhere between Libya and Syria, Libya and Sahel. Still a lot of stuff there. Apart from the fact that the batteries are now all dead because they've been there so long. The Chinese I think they bought 100 batteries from the SA-7s, and they reverse engineered it. So if you need any batteries for the shit that's lying around in the desert still, we know who to contact.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. That was the buyback.
So it seems like
that's what the buybacks brought.
It seems like war is profitable. Obviously, it makes a lot of people a lot of money.
That's
not just
the
about
incentive with it. They don't. I mean, okay. People say, "Oh, you're an arms dealer. You're as bad as everybody else." Yeah, no, that's not right. I supplied it.
You're a capitalist.
I like my money the same as the next guy. Yeah. It doesn't mean to say that I'll do anything illegal for it. I won't do it. And morally, okay, if I don't like a country that comes to me and says, yeah, we need some arms to suppress the civilian population, I'll tell them go and pound sand.
Right.
I just won't do it. There are certain countries that I won't sell to, even though I'm allowed to. And this is the big problem that pisses me off with the governments of the world, especially the Western world. Take the Americans, the Brits, the Germans, the French. They have these lists of countries that you're not allowed to sell to. I have them on my licenses. You're not allowed to move arms from A to B or to this country without it coming from this country. There's a whole load of stipulations, which doesn't make my job easy.
But isn't there, Costa, a way around it that maybe you're not aware of? If I'm representing a legitimate country and I want to sell to an illegitimate country, just like the example you mentioned where they drop it off in Poland and then it goes to Ukraine, does that happen? Can you be an unwitting participant?
Me? No.
Well, if you sell to me and I then take it to a forbidden country, per se.
Well, then you're in breach of the end user certificate that you signed and can be thrown in jail for nearly as long as Victor Bout. But you're an American. You're an American, so that wouldn't happen. They'd probably give you a fucking medal.
Victor Bout, he mentioned that? Who
Victor
is
Bout.
that? That name rings a bell.
He let's just say, if you remember about a year ago, while Brittany Griner and I was imprisoned in Russia for what, that sounds like Kendall County in a way, because she had
the sheriff in Russia arrested her for little weed.
She had just a little bitty bit of weed, some residue, and she was doing some time over there, and then
we
somehow We
Didn't
did a trade.
That's where I heard the name.
Yeah.
Yes.
We traded.
Yeah.
So you know about this guy. I take it.
Oh, yeah,
Costa.
of course I know. Everybody knows Victor Bout. There
Tell
are
us about it.
12, well, there were 12 infamous black arms dealers in the world. One was Victor
Mhm.
Bout. There was one guy, I forgot his name now, he was a Ukrainian. They caught him in Italy in a hotel with, I think, 4 or 5 whores, 5 kilos of coke under his bed, and some blood diamonds that had gotten there. He went to jail, I think.
He just spilled out of his
Yeah,
pocket.
well, the coke as well, probably. But they arrested him. I don't know what happened to him. I know he went to jail for a very short amount of time. It's a dirty business. It is a very dirty business. If you go down that road, then you have to be prepared for, well, either a bullet in the back of the head or being murdered in a dark street or something like that. I mean, it's a dirty business. You go on the wrong
Mhm.
side of governments, and your life is just not worth anything. They will take you out.
Well, even doing legitimate, doing it legitimately, it's obviously still dangerous.
Oh yeah. I mean,
You're
the thing is with me, legitimate is legitimate. Now, a lot of people would say, well, morally it's not right. I don't give a shit. It's my morals that count. Now, if I have a country, we'll take Nigeria. I'm not allowed to sell to Nigeria, but Nigeria is full of Al-Shabaab at the moment. And there was a tragic story not so very long ago about some villages up in the northern part of Nigeria, well away from the main cities, where Al-Shabaab had gone in and been murdering men, women, children, kidnapping children, etc., etc. Somebody approached me and said, is there any way that we can help? I said, well, I can't sell them guns, man. Their country is on my B list, which means I have to get extra permission from the British government to even send one bullet there. So they said, well, is there anything we can do? I said, look, I'll put you in touch with somebody. And what they did was they got together some arms. It wasn't very much. They got together some arms and some ammunition, and they flew it into northern Nigeria and landed at a private airstrip and unloaded it and donated free the arms and ammunition to the villagers so that they could protect themselves. Yeah. Now, this is why I have a quandary. Why am I not allowed to sell to those people so they can defend themselves against terrorists? Yeah. Now, obviously, the answer that's going to come back from various governments is, well, we can't be sure the weapons are going to the right people. Now, bullshit. Yeah. Give them the chance to defend themselves. The government's not looking after them. So, yeah.
it is a conundrum.
Yeah.
What about Latin America, Costa? We have a lot of problems with the drug smuggling coming out of Mexico, Colombia.
Well, blame your ATF for that, because they send all the guns over from you guys.
Tell us about that.
Well,
What do you mean
Fast
by
and
that?
Furious. The Operation Fast and Furious that your government put together and sent a shitload of arms into Mexico, saying that they were going to track them. They apparently had RFID trackers on them, etc., and they were going to make sure they got into the hands of the people that shouldn't have them, and they were going to go in and wipe them out. Well, did any of that happen? No. Only the arms went over there, and that was it. And since then,
No, we had an agent get shot with one of those.
One of my guys, one of the Border Patrol agent.
Exactly. Tourists getting kidnapped by the cartels there. Innocent people getting shot up in drive-bys. People that are Europeans that were involved with real estate over there getting murdered because they didn't want to pay off the locals. And the weapons, they're all coming from the States. Yeah.
Well, I know in Mexico and the U.S. For a long time had the Merida Agreement, which is I don't know if you're familiar with that, Costa, where the U.S. provides weapons or helicopters and other sources of military support to the government of Mexico to fight the cartels. Are you familiar with that?
I only know what I've heard about. either through alternative media sources or from contacts in that area. But the thing is, this is mostly from the government to, theoretically, the government of Mexico.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, how is it possible that you guys have been sending so much shit over there that nothing has ever happened? I mean, where are the weapons going? They're going into Mexico, and then where? Yeah, who's moving them from there? Because I'm damn sure they're not all staying in Mexico. It's impossible. And there's so much corruption in Mexico that, I mean, if you put two and two together, you know, they're being sold on. They're being smuggled across the border into other countries who are paying a pretty penny.
It reminds me of Iran-Contra. Were you around during that period,
around.
Costa?
I remember Mr. North, General North, was it? I think he was a general.
Ollie.
Colonel, that's right. Colonel North,
yeah.
that's right. Colonel North. Well, I mean, when governments start to do dirty deeds done dirt cheap to implicate sovereign governments, in this case Iran, Iraq, you know, you're going to end up, you can do the deed, you know, but you're going to end up with a fucking mess afterwards. And that's what happened. You know? I mean, the states gave Saddam Hussein, I think, thousands and thousands of tons of gas to wage war against the Iranians because the Americans wanted to. They gave him the gas. What did he end up doing? He ended up gassing hundreds of thousands of Kurds. Yeah, as well as gassing the Iranians. Yeah, when governments like I won't say so much Germany because they learned their lesson in 1945 or from 39 to 45. When governments start to do that shit, well, you're lighting one end of the fuse and you're not running away. They don't step back after lighting the fuse. Yeah, I don't know. When I was a kid, we used to have like firecrackers. Yeah, and we'd go out in the fields and plant them in the cow shit and light them. And we'd light them until when the farmer was walking by, and he'd walk right by this cow shit, and this crackerjack or firecracker hanger, as we call them, would explode and spray the farm with cow shit. Yeah, well, that's what's happening. That's what's happening with whatever the U.S. or the doing around the world. Yeah. The thing is,
yeah,
their laws cover them to do that. Yeah. They will just say, "Oh well, you know, we are allowed to because we're a government entity." It was proved. It was proved by a parliamentary committee or by the Senate or whatever. Yeah, we did it legally. Yeah, sure, you did it legally because you make the fucking rules. Yeah. If I did it, I'd end up in jail for, I'd end up in jail for maybe 50 or 70 years or whatever.
Incredible.
Yeah. So it is really, as you said, Bob, war is good for business. That's the only thing it is good for. It's business. It's certainly not good for anything else. I mean, it's one thing to defend your country, but it's another thing to, how can I put this, sell fire sticks.
Make money off of their stuff.
Sell fire sticks to the Red Indians and give them whiskey. Yeah.
Wow.
Along with some free contaminated blankets.
That as well. Yeah. So, you know, it's a dirty business. And if you don't, if you're not careful.
Costa, would you?
Go on, Bob. Go on.
Would you recommend? It sounds like you've enjoyed your life, though. You've had an interesting life.
Yeah, I wouldn't change it for anything. Well, a couple of things I'd change, but.
So, but how does one go if I decide I want to get into international arms dealing? Where do I start?
Go and get an ITAR license as an arms dealer. You're American, so ITAR covers you.
Yes, and the DDTC.
Yeah, well, actually, it's not ITAR anymore so much. It's the Department of Trade in the States, or Department of Commerce.
Right, the DDTC.
Yeah, Department of Trade and Commerce, yeah. You get a license from them. And I know a couple of guys there. One of them actually is quite a famous arms dealer. He is a great guy. He has He has a very good business in this. He was wanted by Argentina for a while, and Interpol had him on a red list, but wouldn't extradite him because they were too busy working with him at the time. He's a very good friend, wonderful guy, and he has the most amazing selection of things you can buy. You know, be like a kid walking into a candy store. Whatever you need, he's got.
Why don't more people do it, John? If it sounds like most people can get into it, right? Sounds easy.
It's not easy.
Very profitable.
I believe that the people that would want to get involved or would be interested in becoming an international arms dealer have probably got some sort of a screw loose at some point to begin with.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much, John.
Yeah, I know. We just insulted our guest.
Hey, I don't think Costa would deny maybe having one or two rattling around in there. I know I do.
Why do you say that? Because it's dangerous, or
it's dangerous.
You're dealing with the different element.
I think there's a huge misconception in the West on international arms dealers that you can make a good living at it, but you're not, number one, going to become independently wealthy unless you're on the black side. If I understand correctly, doing things legal.
It's almost like being a federal firearms, having your FFL.
Correct.
All your relatives want you to they want to save the $25. They want you to take the weapon in for free.
Exactly.
There's not a lot of money in that.
There's right. So why would you want to become one? Well, because I think it's been romanticized by Hollywood. And then if somebody were to try to get into and Costas, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't go to university to get a degree as an international arms dealer.
I learned, so what I know, I learned myself. A lot of it comes from the counter-proliferation side when I was working for government entities, let's put it that way. Counter-proliferation side. Well, once you know the counter-proliferation side, you know how it's supposed to work. You know, but you don't know how to do it. So then you have to find out for yourself. So then you start reading. But as you said, John, there's no university where you can go and learn how to be an international arms dealer. Talking of which, very quickly, when this whole shit in Israel kicked off, I was inundated with quotes, RFQs, requests for quote, can you get us this, can you get us that? And there was a young Israeli girl, American Israeli, who I can't remember now where she got my contact details from, but she got my contact details, and she contacted me over WhatsApp, and she said, I need this, and this. I said, oh, what is it for? She said, Israel. I said, well, forget it. Go and find yourself an American, because the Israelis will only deal with American dealers and brokers. They won't deal with anybody outside. And we got chatting, and she said, I'd really like to do what you do. I said, no, you wouldn't. How old are you? She said, I'm 28. I said, forget it. Go and become a teacher or something. You'll make more money in the end. She said, well, can I be your apprentice? I said, listen, I'm not Donald Trump. I don't do apprentices. So she said, no, seriously, I'd really like to do what you do. Can you teach me? I said, no, I can't teach you. You have to come and sit beside me in the office every day and listen to the phone calls, etc., etc., etc. It's the only way you'll learn, and you make mistakes. You learn by your mistakes. And if you make one mistake too many, they lock you up. So this is why a lot of people, they would very much like to do it. I know a few, let me think, 5, 6, 7, there may be about 10 people in the States that do what I do. But they're Americans. Their laws are a lot different to mine, or the ones that I'm governed with, even though I don't live in governed by the UK laws.
Now you say that there's approximately 10 individuals that are involved in this process. Number one, I doubt they can do what you can do.
Put it this way, they've been doing it for a very long time. They have many contacts. They have as many contacts, if not more, than I do. In fact, we know each other's contacts, not through each other, but because of the work we do. I know their contacts, they know my contacts. It's a small, very, very tight-knit group of people that do this. It's like somebody comes to me and says, oh, I need this and this. And I'm like, okay. Give me 24 hours, I'll see what I can find. And in the first 4 hours, I've sent emails off to everybody on my contact list, including you. I say 10, it could be more, it could be less. I send emails to all of my contacts. Hey, I need this. Anybody know anybody? And that's how it works. But obviously, the more people are involved in that chain of supply or chain of acquiring, they all want their little bit. So that increases the prices. So at the end of the day,
I saw that during the match.
It's like I said, I don't keep a garage full of AKs. You know? If I did, I could make a lot more money. I'd probably end up being arrested by the police, but whatever. You know, I don't keep the shit. What I buy is mostly from Serbia, from South Africa, from the States. I buy a lot of ammunition from the States. But if there's one buyer, there are at least 15 people behind him trying to give him the deal. Or if one of those 15 can't supply it, well, they don't know anybody who has it, then they have to go and find it from somewhere else. And every person in that chain wants their cut, as I said. So that's why arms and ammunition are so expensive in the legal world. There are many countries that won't go to the factories. They won't buy from factories. They won't buy from governments because they know the government won't sell to them because of certain political reasons, whatever. Which is why they come to people like me.
So you said you buy from Serbia, the United States, some of your top two customers. Who are the buyers? Who are the ones you sell the most to?
Well, most of my clients are in MENA, Middle East and North Africa. Yeah, I sold a lot to Kuwait, a couple of deliveries to the UAE, Emirates. That comes from Czechoslovakia to those countries. And then in Africa, yeah.
And Costa, have you seen an increase since the conflict in Israel and Ukraine? Have you seen a spike, or has it always been steady?
To buy?
Yes.
There's always people that want. At the moment, though, there are two wars going on, pretty big wars, Ukraine and Israel. So most of the weapons and ammunition that's being supplied by government entities. Now, as far as Ukraine is concerned, the governments have run out of ammunition. They can't find 150 millimeter shells, for example. So they've outsourced. They've spread their feelers outside of their normal field of acquiring things. They've approached me, the Germans approached me to find 155 millimeter ammunition. I have it.
And here we are buying it from, or taking it back from Taiwan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I found a whole load of stuff that was in Asia, 155 millimeter shells. By the time I got it and gave them the price, there was a lot of humming and hawing. No, it's too expensive. We can find it cheaper than that. Oh, fuck you. Go and find it cheaper then. Yeah, you asked for it. I've got it. That's the price. Take it or leave it. Yeah, and then
since you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The Germans, they asked me to find 4,122 millimeter Grad rockets. This is for Ukraine now, yeah. And 8,000 mortar rounds. I find it. I give them the price. They say, okay, we'll pass this on to Ukraine. Ukraine comes back and says, well, we've already got that from the Americans. We don't need that now. We need something else. We need this. So it's always the same. They'll ask for stuff. You find it. Oh, that was yesterday. We don't need that now. We need something else. They've got no organization whatsoever. And Ukraine is so flooded with arms at the moment. I don't think they even know themselves what they've got. No.
Interesting comment.
Well, and now I've got to ask, if they've got more than they know what to do with, supposedly,
right.
Number one, why do we continue to send it over there? And then number two, is there a possibility that those are going somewhere else? Because it sounds as if there's no accountability.
Think of it this way. I can go on the dark web right now, and find a website. Well, I know the website. I can find a website that sells shit that's just come out of Ukraine. Now, as I said, there are no methods of transport directly from Europe. We say Ramstein, which is where the Americans have the base for putting all their shit together and sending it to Ukraine. Okay, they can't send it directly into Ukraine. They can't fly into Ukraine. They get shot down. So they send it to Poland. Now, in Poland, when that shit lands, there are people from a certain nation state, I won't say where, that their arms dealers are waiting there with large wads of money. They will buy the shit directly off the plane and it'll be shipped out somewhere else. Yeah. You can find that on the dark web. You can buy Moors, the Saab Moors, shoulder-fired rocket, John. Remember those ones? I forget now what you call them in the US. You can buy those on the dark web. Yeah.
Or 8 before.
And all this shit is supposedly going to Ukraine. It's not. It's not. All of it is certainly not getting in there. And whatever.
It sounds like they have a lot.
But yet we've still got to underwrite it and keep sending more money to them.
Yes.
I don't think sorry, John. I don't think you're sending money to them. You're sending goods to the value of. Obviously, there's some money
Thank you for that correction.
There's obviously been a lot of money that's being sent to them because I know that the European Union, the Brits, the US, obviously, are underwriting the costs of their government being able to continue. But where does it end? It's a bottomless barrel. You're never going to fill the barrel. There's a hole in the bottom. It's never going to end. Unless this war ends, I'm afraid you guys and the rest of the world, the Western world, are going to continue pumping money into it. The citizens of the countries that are sending that money are going to get poorer and poorer. In the end, there's going to be civil strife and, I won't go so far as to say a revolution, but possibly they'll be fighting in the streets. Yeah, in the end. That's how bad it's going to get unless that stops. Unfortunately,
so it's interesting that
unfortunately, your president is to blame.